Let's start with a puzzle. What could possibly connect a ticking clock, an invasive weed, and a person trapped in poverty? Now, on the surface, they seem to have absolutely nothing in common. But what if I told you they're all players in the exact same cosmic drama? In this explainer, we're going to deconstruct these three phenomena to reveal a profound hidden link, a single universal principle that governs the struggle for existence. This is going to be a deep dive, so let's begin.
You know, St. Augustine perfectly captured the heart of our inquiry with this quote. He was, of course, talking about time. But that sense of knowing something until you're forced to explain it, that applies to everything we're discussing. We have this intuitive grasp of these concepts, but the moment we try to define them, the moment we try to pin them down, they just slip away. That's the challenge we're facing here, to articulate something that is, by its very nature, elusive.
To really see the connection, we first need to understand the stage where this drama plays out. And it's not just the physical world we see around us. It's a very specific plane of being, a flawed and temporary arena for existence itself.
So what is the stage called? The source material gives it a fascinating name, the Sublunary Abode. It's a very old way of saying everything beneath the moon, which basically means us, our world. But it's more than a location, it's a condition. It's a realm defined by mortality, by constant change, where nothing is permanent and everything is subject to decay. Think of it as a state of being, one that's defined by its inherent imperfection and the constant dance between creation and destruction.
And the very ground of this sublunary abode, the floor of this cosmic theater, is described as tessellated. It's like a checkerboard, a mosaic of black and white tiles. This is a powerful symbol. It means that light and dark, order and chaos, are not two separate forces battling for control. No, they are fundamentally interwoven into the very fabric of this reality. Life here is a perpetual state of conflict and tension, a constant negotiation between these opposing principles. This is the environment we're working with.
So, let's look at our first subject. We're going to examine one of humanity's most ambitious projects, the attempt to impose a rational, predictable order on the wild, untamable chaos of time.
When it comes to understanding time, humanity has really been split between two major ideas. On one hand, you have the ancient pagan view of time as a circle, an endless cycle of birth, death, and renewal. It's symbolized by the uroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. But then, the Judeo-Christian tradition, which really shaped the modern West, introduced a totally different idea. Time as a straight line, an arrow with a clear beginning and a definitive end. And this creates a huge philosophical problem, doesn't it? How do you map the straight line of linear progress onto the endless, repeating cycles of nature?
This image really says it all. You see the circle of eternal return being pierced by the arrow of linear time. This is a perfect metaphor for what we do. We invent systems, clocks, calendars, schedules, all in an attempt to tame the wild, chaotic nature of time. We're desperately trying to project a sense of perfect celestial order onto our messy sublunary reality. It is a constant, unending struggle between our deep-seated need for control and the fundamental uncertainty of the world.
And when you really look at our methods for measuring time, you realize just how arbitrary, how utterly artificial it all is. The start of a new day? Well, that depends on who you ask. We say midnight, but ancient traditions started it at sunset or sunrise. The word new in itself actually comes from a monastic prayer time that used to be in the mid-afternoon. It gets even more intricate. The Byzantines divided the hour into 2,400 indivisible units. For centuries, the greatest minds in Europe obsessed over a sacred science called the computus, a ridiculously complex calculation just to figure out when Easter should be. This isn't just about measurement. It's a relentless, almost desperate, human drive to impose our will on the cosmos.
Okay, now let's shift our focus. We're moving from the conceptual struggle to control an idea like time to a very real, very physical struggle against the outsider, that uninvited entity that shows up and disrupts the established order, whether that's in an ecosystem or in human society. To truly understand this dynamic of invasion, we need a specific term from the source material, the Kawan. Now, a Kawan is, simply put, an outsider. It's someone who doesn't belong to the established group, who isn't privy to its secrets and doesn't know the rules. But it's more than that. A Kawan is, by their very nature, a disruptive force. They don't just exist outside the system, they challenge it, often by building a new order of their own. As we'll see, this concept is the key to linking biological invaders with the socially destitute.
So how does an outsider, a Kawan, become a conqueror? Well, the process of biological invasion is a textbook case. First, a new species arrives. Then, something crucial happens. It experiences what's called enemy release.
It's suddenly free from all the native predators and parasites that kept it in check back home. With nothing holding it back, this outsider can redirect all of its energy toward one goal: reproduction and dominance. It achieves a state of eminence, and its success can be so profound that it triggers an invasional meltdown, where its presence helps other invaders, leading to a total collapse of the native system. It's a shockingly effective strategy. And here, we see the truly radical, alchemical power of the outsider. Take the case of this grass, Spartina anglica. A native British grass crosses with an alien American one. Their offspring? It's sterile. That should be the end of the story, right? But it's not. Through a complete genetic accident, the hybrid's chromosomes suddenly double, and in that instant, a brand new, hyper-fertile, and incredibly invasive species is born. This supergrass then proceeds to conquer the British coastline. It's an incredible example of how the outsider doesn't just disrupt a system. It can create something entirely new and more powerful in the process.
And this table, this is where the entire argument clicks into place. Look at the parallels. In biology, you have the founder effect, a new population starting from just a few isolated individuals. This mirrors the social outcast described by Orwell, someone detached from society. The esoteric meaning? To be divested, stripped of all baggage. Next, biology gives us the enemy release hypothesis, where a species thrives once it's freed from its natural predators. Well, Orwell talks about the moral freedom of poverty, which frees people from normal standards of behavior. This is the essence of the Cowan, operating outside the established rules. Finally, hybridization creates new, aggressive forms. Sociologically, this is like the subcultures of the destitute, alternate ways of being, born out of necessity. It is a transitory life, a state of constant, undefined becoming. The parallels are just undeniable.
Orwell's observation here is just so sharp. Poverty frees them from ordinary standards of behavior, just as money frees people from work. But let's be very clear, this is not a desirable freedom. This is the freedom of having absolutely nothing left to lose. It's being completely cut loose from the anchors of society. In the exact same way an invasive species is freed from the rules of its native ecosystem, a person in deep poverty is freed from the rules of society, not by choice, but by necessity. They are forced to become a koan.
And it's critical to understand that poverty is not simply a lack of money. It is a cognitive prison. The source material calls it a mental bandwidth tax, and that's exactly what it is. When every ounce of your mental energy is consumed by the immediate problem of survival, where will my next meal come from, there is simply no room left to think about anything else. The future ceases to exist as a concept. All that's left is the crushing, immediate weight of the present. Time itself collapses into a single, agonizing point of survival.
And so, we arrive at the synthesis. This is where we take these separate threads, time, invasion, and poverty, and weave them together to reveal the single, unifying principle that connects them all.
So let's return to that initial question. After everything we've looked at, what is the connection? What is the common thread that runs through a human-made calendar, an invasive plant, and a destitute human being?
Here is the answer. They are all manifestations of the same eternal conflict, the struggle between an imposed artificial order and the raw, unrefined, chaotic state of being. The esoteric tradition has a term for this raw state: rude matter. It's the unprocessed material of existence that resists our attempts to shape and control it. A calendar is our attempt to impose order on the rude matter of time. The invasive species and the person in poverty, they are the rude matter made manifest, the outsiders that the established system has failed to process, failed to tame.
So, living on this tessellated floor, on this cosmic checkerboard, how does the outsider survive? Well, the strategy is universal. You hide and you defend. The tradition calls this hile, which means concealment, and du garde, which means defense. An invasive species camouflaging itself from a predator is practicing hile. A person in poverty hiding their situation to avoid shame and judgment is also practicing hile. They are both outsiders on the checkerboard, employing the same fundamental arts of survival.
And this leads us to a rather profound conclusion. The universe doesn't just belong to the system builders, the architects of order, who create intricate calendars and rigid social structures. It also belongs to the kaon. It belongs to the outsider, the disruptive force, the survivor who must ignore the official blueprint and build their own reality with the raw, unmortared stones of existence. Disruption, it turns out, isn't an error in the system, it's a fundamental force of the cosmos. So where does that leave us?
It suggests that all of our systems, all of our desperate attempts to create a predictable, orderly world, are built on a foundation of sand. We live in a world of constant flux, on a tessellated floor of perpetual conflict. And that can be a terrifying thought, but it can also be incredibly sublime. It means that nothing is ever truly fixed, that transformation is always possible, that even the most powerful systems are vulnerable to disruption, and that ultimately, the only final reality, the only thing we can truly rely on, is the terrifying and beautiful power of change itself.